Yeah, we like to think of ourselves as four things. We're a membership organization, and we have been, since our founding in 2012-ish. So, membership organization. We're also an accreditation organization. We support trust services, and we have an ANSI accredited standards development organization. So, bunches of different things that we do. These are kind of supportive of each other. So our accreditation program makes it possible for our trust services to function, because you need a bunch of policy to make trust services work, and our trust services support our accreditation so that we can accredit the HISPs, who are the folks that operate the direct secure messaging network. So the direct secure messaging network is what people know us for.
Right.
That's the roughly 300,000 organizations that can exchange information with, securely between each other with an email-based protocol. It's actually email as a protocol. It's not email itself, but secure and supported by public key infrastructure, which is makes it extremely secure and very difficult for a man in the middle to gain access to anything. And so this has really been a challenge for us, to be honest. I mean, TEFCA, it was funny, Mickey was here yesterday, and if you were here, Mickey said, "Oh, it's a room full of people. I know half of you hate TEFCA, and the other half of you really hate TEFCA." It was actually, he got a good laugh out of that, or people, and there is some truth to that. There's some concern about TEFCA. I think, although there is a sort of an inevitability that has occurred, I think, with now it seems here. And so I think people are trying to figure out, well, how do I fit with this? So for direct, it's the push messaging vehicle, I think, in TEFCA is not the same as direct, and it's actually a bit in conflict with that. But I think most folks that I talk to in the QHINs think that direct secure messaging should stay with direct because it already works pretty well. It is the single.
Pretty well. It works really well. Don't undersell the value of the security, because I think that we, trust is a big factor with TEFCA. Trust is the first word, and a friend of mine said, without trust, TEFCA is EFCA, and you know where that gets us, right? So I'll use that joke throughout the podcast when I can plug it in.
Well, I think adoption and use and usability are the things that I think are most important to us. I think that at this point in time, so much traffic is happening. I think that we are getting a lot of good, and we are getting some good value. I think that's true. I think push messaging works. So I think that's in place, and I think query messaging, in large part. Somebody asked me today, well, what is TEFCA? And I said, well, you know what care quality is? Yes. Yeah. Do you know what Conwell is? I said, yeah. I said, they're connected? Yeah. Okay. That's TEFCA, at least at the beginning, except it's going to be done with, instead of, I don't know how many care quality implementers there are now, like
a lot.
But I mean, that care quality implementer community will, narrow down to a much smaller number, and that will be the QHINs and those QHINs. So
flip the script on me, Scott.
So this is, I think, facilitated fire is meant to be stage 2. So stage 1 is this kind of what you already have with the app of your choosing, and use the portal credential to get into the HR using the credential, smart credential.
It's okay. We don't have a highly technical audience, so you're fine. He's just going to move forward.
So that part,
we have that part.
You got that part, and then you got this notion of facilitated fire, which is communications directly between participants and sub-participants, not through the QHINs. So the QHINs are not going to broker these. They're going to facilitate them by giving them RLS services and, also some certificates. Those certificates are going to make it possible to do this communication, successfully. But this kind of communication, that goes between these two places, this is what our new, we'll park that for a second. We'll talk about that in a second. My question for you is, the third stage they're talking about.
Third stage, stage 3.
Brokered fire.
Brokered fire.
Fire, which is not fundamentally intended to be used this way.
Right.
I mean, it's not, so it's a bit of a bastardization of fire. So fire, the notion that you would go through the queue.
Which of the Johns is going to be upset that we've bastardized fire?
Is
it Hlamka? I don't know.
Well, there's so many Johns I can think of.
Well, that's okay. All right. Sorry, John. We're going to apologize to John now for bastardizing his fire. Okay.
My sense about brokered fires, I'm actually just not a believer that it's going to work very well.
Yeah.
I also think it's going to again erode trust because it's going to be unclear with whom I'm communicating, and it's the other thing about fire is that when you actually make a connection to a fire server, you actually authenticate to it, and so you have to provide a credential that allows you to kind of authenticate to it. And those credentials, if they're passed from one place to another, they actually are bound. Those credentials are bound to the endpoint that issues them, and they're not, having them traverse a network actually doesn't. They can traverse a network, but they can't go through a broker.
Yeah. See, Scott, the security expert, is telling me why brokered fire won't work. So
the other thing, and this is one of the things that bothers me the most, and this is actually like. My dad used to say about our trash compactor. He said, yeah, I got my trash compactor. It takes 25 pounds of trash and turns it into 25 pounds of trash. And so, I said, okay. But then later in life,
is that like a pound of water and a pound of feathers are still a pound?
Yes, still a pound.
Okay,
it's the same idea.
Okay, right.
So, but when I came into healthcare and I was an interface guy really early on, I was implementing interface engines.
Yeah.
And when I got to understand what an interface engine did, I installed a couple things and I said, oh, an interface engine turns 25 pounds of interface trash into 50 pounds of interface trash.
Yes, it does.
Because one interface becomes two.
Or 3 or 5.
Okay, because you get, okay, we're going to take this thing, we're going to put it through the interface engine, and it only goes to one place, and it just goes through the interface engine, and it's using for mapping or something, but it's not routing, and it's just like going through this expensive, not free. I mean, none of these things are free. Honestly, this is what I want is like. We can wish for something new and shiny that's really cool to use, but if we can't figure out how to use what we've got, that's what we really need to do.
All right. So Scott is saying, Mickey, re-implement the RECs, the regional extension centers, optimize the technology that exists, get people to use it the way it's intended, and we'll solve the interoperability deserts that exist today.